Shane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Dave, for having me.
No problem, my man. I don't know if you know this, but in 10 seconds or less, I ask you, what is it that you do?
I help women to remove themselves away from the likes of slimming clubs and get their mental health, their hormones in check, from everything from HA, PCOS, endometriosis, all that kind of stuff, and try to actually educate rather than dictate the whole nutrition and training psychology side of things.
Nice, man. Nice. And how I met you 2019?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't speak to each other, but I met you.
I was leering in the corner, yeah.
How did you get into this? How did you get into the whole world of, I suppose, nutrition, really? Yeah.
So I've got like a little bit of like an X Factor story. So I had a real job for a while. I had a real career for a while. I was an adult at some stage in my life, and I was in sales and recruitment for about 5 or 6 years. And I was very unhappy with it. I didn't enjoy it. I always wanted to be self-employed. And I was fed up of making money for other people and stuff. And then in 2017, in April 2017, I woke up one morning with my left arm very, very swollen. I was like, what is going on here? So I went downstairs. I was kind of like talking or whatever, and I could feel like a fluid develop in my elbow, and there was a rash in my forearm. So I rang one of the lads, and his fiance said, you need to go to the doctor ASAP. So I drove into hospital. Not the best thing I've ever done in my life. And I turned out I had fluid. I had a swollen arm, but I had a trapped kind of like, what do you call it? I had fluid in my lungs as well, but I had kind of like a
trapped nerve, is it?
My mind's gone completely blank. I had blood clots in up here, just above, just kind of like around the neck area, but I couldn't find that one. And then there was one just above the kind of like, or just below, or just above the forearm, kind of in the middle. So I was in hospital for a week and had to get my veins opened up by a balloon. I was awake for that. I could see it. They put dye in. You can see the blue dye going around your arm. And then I went back into work 2 weeks later, and I got fluid on my lungs. I collapsed at my desk with fluid on my lungs. And my mental health went to absolute shit. I fell into a very, very dark place, lost about 2 stone in about 6 weeks. And there's not much of me anyway. And I got very, 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 very depressed, and yeah, just was probably about 1 week away from doing something very, very stupid. And I heard a sentence on a podcast. I'd never listened to a podcast before. It's the very first podcast I ever listened to, which is Stop Caring What Other People Think. And that made me realize, right, there is something else to this. There's something else to kind of go for. So I ended up talking to a mental health professional, and she had come from the fitness industry. She competed in her 20s. So that was just a coincidence. But I always think that's what's meant for you won't pass you by. So that there was a reason why we crossed paths. And we got talking. I started doing like Joe Wicks stuff just to kind of keep my sanity and keep a little bit of exercise, because I used to play football and stopped doing that completely, and started getting into a little bit of shape. I got a lot fitter, and then I went traveling for a few months, and I started doing like HIIT sessions with the people we were traveling with, and I really enjoyed that. And then on my flight home, just before my flight home from Vietnam, I booked my PT course. So I started doing PT from February 2018. I went into the big chain of gyms here. So it was kind of like, it was kind of a weird way to go into fitness, but I think I appreciate what I have more because I went through the shit times. Probably took things for a little bit granted, but it also made me realize that mental health comes number one. I think that's what health means. It means mental health. You can't, if your head's not working, nothing's going to work. So I appreciated that a lot more, and being able to celebrate that, being able to move my body forward and push myself through those boundaries. And I try to bring that approach with my clients as much as possible.
Fantastic. And you did the Mac Nutrition course then with me back in 2019, wasn't it? So
yeah, I did Mac Nutrition, did that for the year. Tough course, but worthwhile. I met some amazing people like yourself, and I've got 2 coaches that work for me from there as well. Like so many of the guests on the Shane Walsh podcast and stuff are from from that kind of circle as well. And it just kind of gave me a little bit more of an insight, a lot more insight into how to actually work with clients and not treat them like robots and work on that side of things. And it just allowed me to understand things a hell of a lot more so that I can bring down the big words and big terms that we see all the time into layman's terms for a general population.
And I think that's what we want to achieve with this podcast as well. Well, it's what I want to achieve with all my podcast episodes, and I'm sure you're very similar. And just for anyone listening, those that don't know, Shane does have a fantastic podcast as well, addressing. Am I right in saying, Shane, it's all around female fat loss? What is it?
I would say probably about 70 or 80% is female fat loss, and then there's a lot more changed. I've rebranded it now to Shane Walsh Podcast. So it was a Shane Walsh Fitness Podcast. So I've moved away from just purely like calories, all that kind of stuff. And now it's kind of like more psychology people. I had like the likes of, say, Brett Bartholomew is coming on to talk about communication and art of coaching on Monday, and then Dr. Judd came on to talk about anxiety, because these are real life things that a lot of people do struggle with. So it's bringing in people that hopefully people can relate to.
100%. I think when you hit a certain age as well, you realize how big these problems are. Like anxiety is it's massive, really. Experienced bouts with myself the last couple of years, didn't know what the hell was going on until a friend made me realize that, man, I think what is going on here is what I was dealing with a couple of years back. And it was only for him, it kind of made me realize that, it can happen to anyone based on any fucking reason, and I think even stuff I did years ago in the health and fitness space, like I tried out certain diets, any meal plan, keto, paleo, what else did I do? I did a lot of shit, and like you said, you define health as mental health. Like that put me in a very, very weird place with food. I had a screwed relationship with food. I thought that I couldn't go anywhere without tracking calories. I thought that I couldn't eat carbs for a few months. I thought that I could only eat X, Y, and Z, and thankfully, obviously, that set me down my path then of becoming a PT and doing precision nutrition course and then doing the macronutrition course. And I think spending literally at this stage, in over the tens of thousands anyway, in education and constant development as a coach, you end up coaching people and you realize that it's not just you that is suffering from X, Y, and Z problem or what might be going on in your head. So I think getting those type of guests on is fantastic. I do need to get a lot more psychology people on mine as well, because I want to cover health, fitness, mindset stuff. And that relates, like for me, that's training, nutrition, mindset. And by mindset, I mean all the stuff around mental health, from goal setting to mental health to whatever. And I suppose that leads us into the next question, or the first question I have for you, Shane, in that you deal with a lot of females. Is there some reoccurring themes with just massive mistakes you see made when a female gets onto in relation to some coaching?
I was, when you sent me over the questions, I wrote out a lot and I had to shortlist it. I was like, what's the highlights?
This boy is prepped.
You should see it, like a beautiful mind in this room with all the notes. So I think one of the big things that kind of comes in is when people start to go on a diet, they start to identify with their diet. They're like, oh, I need to be keto. I need to remove a food. Like if you were to talk to, say, Susan down the road, she'd be like, what diet are you on? What are you actually doing? What's your trick? How's it going for you? So it's kind of like what we try to work on as well. You can have everything. Like I encourage my clients to have chocolate every single day. If they're sweet or savory girls, two types of girls, sweet or savory. But so it's kind of like you need to realize where they're coming from. And if they're coming from a cutting out a food group thing, and the one that they probably cut out the most is either the chocolate or they cut out carbs. And there's nothing wrong with carbs. A food cannot be bad. It's not going to kidnap your family. It has no moral compass. The big thing that I would say about carbs is they're actually essential for women. They turn the key for your ovulation. They start the engine. And if you're not putting carbohydrates into your body, you may as well be starting to try the engine with the carrot. It's not going to work. So you need to have carbohydrates in your body. They're not evil. They're not bad. They're not going to kidnap your family. The other thing is you need to make sure you're leaving the foods in you enjoy. So if you enjoy chocolate or crisps, the first thing that normally goes when people are going on a diet is, I need to cut these out. I want someone to pause right now and say, ask themselves this question: has that ever worked for you long term? The answer is no. So why not try to have some of it every day? The next question will come back is, well, I don't trust myself around that food. Okay, so then we need to say, well, why don't you trust yourself around that food? Because you go for feast or famine mode. But if we're having that food every single day and giving yourself that unconditional permission to have that food, well, then there's the trust. And most people will try to snack in the evening, and that's where the chocolate will come in or the ice cream will come in, and ice cream is great. So why not try to change the time of the day you're having that food? So I sometimes encourage my clients to have chocolate for breakfast. People are like, why are you trying to have them for breakfast? Put it into your oats, a bit of fruit, a bit of berries, a bit of chia seeds, a bit of flax seeds. You're changing the time of the day. You're tricking your mind, because they're used to having it at a certain time of the day. But if you're having it earlier in the day, you're saying to yourself, I can actually have this. It's a tricky one, but it takes a little bit of like time to get used to that. The other thing is MyFitnessPal. Not everyone should use MyFitnessPal. If you have an eating disorder, get the hell off MyFitnessPal and please go and talk to someone. MyFitnessPal, people will go onto it and say, I'm going to enter in 1,200 calories. They'll also go onto it, I want 2 pounds of weight loss a week, when that is like building a house on a foundations of matchsticks. You haven't got the basics right. You're not capable of losing 2 pounds of weight loss a week. And most people, a lot of people don't necessarily need to lose 2 pounds of weight loss a week. They're going for a quick fix. But if you're looking for what is an ideal weight loss a week, 0.5 pound to a pound is probably a safe option. If you're someone who's coming from an overweight background and you lost 0.5 pound on average a week over a year, that's 26 pounds of weight loss. That's quite a significant weight loss. I'm in no way saying someone has to lose 0.5 pound of weight loss a week. I'm saying using that as an example. The other thing that kind of comes in for girls as well is they compare themselves so much on social media. They compare themselves to their friends. They compare themselves to their peer group. And women can be harder on themselves than men. They're predispositioned from the media, from the likes of social media, to look a certain way. But what happens if you want to look the way you want to look and you feel like, and you own your body for you and work your body for you? No one else can take that away from you. But because you can't look at someone, you don't look at me right now and say, what does Shane weigh? So why does it matter what you weigh? So you need to look at it from a comparison point of view. Is what I want you to say this sentence to yourself: what do I have that they don't have? We always want something that someone else has, but we don't actually appreciate what we actually have. You may have a family, you may have a loving husband, you may have an incredible house or a job, or you may have something that you like about your body. And sometimes that we feel like that's a selfish thing, that we say that we like these things about ourselves. But that's actually being selfish, because you're not giving the world your best by saying that I appreciate myself. There's an amazing book called Self-Compassion by Kirsten Neff, and she's the queen of self-compassion. She's on YouTube, she's on loads of podcasts, and she talks about this. And then she does an exercise of appreciating yourself. Name 10 things that you appreciate yourself with. Most people will struggle to get past one. And that's the unfortunate position. Girls also have times, a particular month, where their headspaces might go left, right, center. So that's when the time the self-compassion comes in. If you were to ask yourself, when you get to those low points, the negative voice comes in. That is a voice. That is a thought. A thought is a belief. A belief isn't a fact. It is a fleeting belief that comes into your mind, but that is an inner voice. You have two sides to your brain. You've got the irrational voice and you've got the animal voice. The animal voice is this irrational thing, and the irrational voice is the one that the voice of reason, what tells you to look left, right, and center when you're crossing the road. You don't have to listen to the irrational voice. It's like the devil on the shoulder. You don't have to listen to it, but you can name that voice and give it a name. I was talking, one of my clients' episodes out this morning, she names her voice Sam, and she thanks Sam for that feeling or for that voice, because it's killing that bully with kindness. It's when you're a kid and you get bullied, your parents say, don't react or kill that bully with kindness, say hello to that person every single day. It's the exact same thing. You're killing that bully with kindness and taking the power away from it. That voice feeds on negativity, but if you're not giving it any negativity, it can't grow. It's the same thing. And the most important thing is understanding your body for you. If you don't understand your body, your partner cannot understand you, and it's not fair to you or those around you, that if you're kind of like mood swings left, right, and center, you're getting cravings, all this kind of stuff. The likes of understanding your body is essential. When you should train, when you need a little bit more food, understanding when you're going to have lower points during the day, when you're going to get stressed, how you react to those stressful situations, getting your sleep prioritized. If you've got kids, they're going to pick up on what you're doing. If you're negative to yourself, they are going to pick up on what you do. You probably do things right now that your parents did. Nothing against your parents, because we all have things, the good things and bad things that our parents have taught us. But if you look at yourself right now, do you want to do the same mistakes that your parents have potentially made and apply those to your own kids? Or do you want to address these now so that when they are a little bit older, they're not going to do the same things? So cutting out food groups, cutting out chocolate, going for silly low calorie, 1,200 calories on a MyFitnessPal, going for 2 pounds of weight loss a week, comparison and understanding your body are probably the main things.
Wow. That was a powerful intro, Shane.
That was a rant.
I think we've enough there. That was fantastic. No, some very good stuff there that I can completely relate to with their own clients as well. First thing that comes to mind is this 2 pounds a week thing. We've had clients come to us in the past wanting a lot more than that. I don't think some people appreciate how much a pound of fat is. And
no, if you show the picture to them, they're like, what?
Yeah. But one I've tried as well with people, go home and weigh out a pound of butter. Yeah. And you just realize, I was like, fuck, that's a lot. And the reason why, I think another reason why, if you got that same pound of butter, melted it and put it all over your body, you'd barely even notice it because you've put it all over you. So I think if people lost a pound and it came from your arm, you're going to notice a big lump gone, but we just don't appreciate it because it seems like it's coming off so slowly. But a pound of fat is a lot of fucking fat, and you have to appreciate that. But there's so much more behind that too, like Shane mentioned, the sustainability element of that, aiming for a half pound to a pound a week. And yes, we could argue, dependent on how much weight someone is carrying, I mightn't even aim for half a pound or pound a week. I might aim for percentages, because if somebody's carrying a bit more weight, they can afford more of a percentage. If somebody's leaner, a pound or even a half pound for them might actually be a lot, So it's having this knowledge as well. This is where coaches come in. Obviously, we'll guide our clients with that. But yeah, the comparison thing, compassion, like there's some very, very good stuff there, Shane. I want to ask you, what was that book? Who was the author of that book again?
Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. She is the queen of she's the queen of self-compassion. I think it's also a lot of people do struggle with the difference between weight loss and fat loss. Like weight loss is what it says in the scales, and a fat loss is how you look and feel. And if you're someone that gets triggered by the scales, throw it out the window and get it run over by a car. That's probably what I would, because the scales isn't ultimately there. Scales is the relationship between you and gravity at that one point in time. It shouldn't be your relationship between you and your self-worth. So if you're stepping on it and measuring your self-worth, which is something you've no control over, what that scales pops up. That's a number in time. That doesn't mean that's you at that time. Doesn't mean it's anything about you at that time. If you're someone that gets triggered by that scales, there's two people that you can educate people on both sides. You can say, right, step on it every single day and you'll see the hormonal fluctuations. Like the stock market, it will go up and down. Or else you can have the other person that may need to step off it completely and remove that trigger, because a gun cannot go off without a trigger. So most people, if the scales goes up, they'll probably say, fuck this, I'm flat slashing all my tires and I'm just going to have everything now. But if you remove the scales, you'll remove the trigger and the gun can't go off. So now it's about appreciating yourself, working on your inner voice, and working on yourself that little bit more. That's the uncomfortable side. Most PTs, most coaches will not work on, and most people do not want to work on the uncomfortable stuff. Yeah,
we've actually seen the two sides of that coin, where I used to be of the mindset of no weigh-ins at all. Throw out your scales, don't do any. And then I realized, okay, this is backfiring, because obviously you have to take context into the equation, but there's a side where if we're trying to educate you around how weight actually fluctuates, it can be a good tool if you do not get fixated and you have this fuck it mentality because a weight is higher on any given day of the week. For example, at the moment, we're in the middle of season with our sport, and I'm actually keeping an eye on my weight once to twice per week, just to make sure I'm actually not losing weight, because to make sure I'm getting enough energy in, I'm staying hydrated, etc. I did not weigh myself this morning, even though I planned to, simply because I knew yesterday I got a tattoo. I was 4 hours sitting down. I did not eat great. I was wrecked when I got home. I had to drive a bit of a distance. I didn't drink enough water. I was dehydrated going to bed. I woke up severely dehydrated. So if I weighed myself in today, I would have been down on the scales. And I knew that wasn't an accurate representation. Like, so I just didn't bother doing it today because I had that education not to make me think that, oh, I'm after losing half a kilo or a kilo yesterday or this week. I'm like, oh, fuck, I need to eat more today. I just avoided that completely because I knew it was just going to be inaccurate. So if you weigh yourself on a Friday, like Shane says, you don't have any control over what you're going to weigh in. Obviously, we'll try and do a weigh-in at the most accurate time of the day, which is after your bathroom, preferably in your underwear or nothing. And if you weigh in on a Friday, for example, you've had a long week at work, you're stressed out with kids maybe at home, maybe you ate either less or more on the Thursday night. If you ate a more carbier meal versus the night before, your weight can fluctuate anywhere from probably 1 to 4 pounds based on those factors alone. So if you're up 4 pounds on the Friday, but you're down 2 pounds on the Saturday, but you didn't weigh yourself on the Saturday, you're going to be triggered probably by that Friday. So that's where we look at getting a minimum of 3 weigh-ins a week for somebody just to educate them. But as you said, Shane, if somebody's attaching their self-worth to that scales, yes, we have gone periods where it's like, right, look, let's just get rid of the scales for now. Because sometimes when we get rid of the scales then with other people, they end up not doing the stuff that they quote unquote should be doing to get the results that they want, and then they get pissed off and it creates just more of a cycle. So there is the reality of, look, if we're trying to lose fat, if we're nailing a deficit and we're doing a bit of training and we're a bit active and everything else is going fine, you're going to get results. It's as simple as that.
Big time.
Whether you weigh in or not, you're still going to get results if you're genuinely doing those things. There is the factor of, and I know me and you have seen, we've seen and heard this research time and time again, that people are notoriously bad for self-reporting their food intake, even if you track in MyFitnessPal. I think the discrepancy is up to like 50% or something crazy, isn't it?
So even the most accurate probably person would still be about 20 or 30% margin for error. So it's still like, even in the right hand.
Yeah, that's huge. Like,
or like that's a huge, like if you were 20, 30% to cut off your salary, you'd notice it. It's the exact same thing. And I think what you said about the scales, particularly for girls, if girls are listening to this, it's really important that if you are on the scales, it's imperative that you compare your like weeks with your like weeks. So week 1 of your cycle post bleed in, say, August, week 1 of your cycle post bleed in September, week 2, week 2, week 2, week 3, week 4. Because if you compare week 1 post bleed to week of your cycle, or week 4 of your cycle, should I say, you are like comparing chalk and cheese. There's going to be different hormonal fluctuations. There's going to be different digestive issues. There's going to be different hormonal issues, because it's going to be water weight. It's going to be bloating. So it's imperative that you do like weeks or like weeks. And that is something that we talk about an awful lot with our clients. And when that penny drops for them, they're like, I have done this for 25 years and I've never known any of this. And I was like, yes, because you went to slimming clubs. Because slimming clubs don't educate. They put you onto a scales, tut when you're up, high five when you're down. They give you that whole thing of
it's fucking
justification,
isn't it?
Like you're paying someone tenner a week, 52 weeks a year, 520 quid a week, or 520 quid a year to weigh you in and tell you whether you're good or bad. Think about it that way. I'm not dissing weighing slimming clubs completely. They have their place. I love the community aspect. But then that comparison thing comes in. Like, oh, Sharon lost 5K. She lost 5 pounds this week. But Sharon's probably starved herself to step on that scales, because the meetings are at like either the morning or the evening. She could have starved herself all day just for the scales to go down. And then as soon as she starts eating the way she's probably meant to, which is having your regular meals, the scale's going to go back up. Or she's probably been licking carrots all day to step on the scales and got nowhere.
Yeah.
But like,
I love your analogies.
I'll try to be my client.
I don't mean to be ignorant by laughing. Let's just make that clear. I just like licking carrots. All I can picture is Shane licking a heap of carrots now. Like, you know,
that's going to be my post tomorrow.
No, like, just as a coach, when you stop and actually think about it, if you go to a weigh-in on a Friday and your weight is up a pound due to time of the month, due to eating more carbs because carbs hold more water, due to stress because stress can hold more water, due to lack of sleep, due to drinking more water, drinking less water, and your weight is up a pound or 2, and you think that you've gained weight since the last week, like, it's so demoralizing to believe that. It's fucking crazy. Like, when you stop and actually think about it, it's crazy. We had a lady with us. She's with us now 3+ years, I believe. More, actually, sorry. Nearly coming up in 4 years now. She came from Slimming World, and she was with me for about 6 months. And she actually kept going to the slimming clubs because she nearly felt an attachment to it. She couldn't stop. I had the conversation with her time and time again, and I realized, okay, Dave, you need to back off here. It's not as black and white as you think. She has an attachment to this. She probably needs to learn for herself that she needs to come away from herself. And I support her as best I could. But I knew it was kind of like, I could see it. It was like no-brainer. Like, what the fuck are you still doing there? Quit the fucking thing. You're here. Why are you doing that? Easy for me to rationalize in my head.
Yeah,
Obviously, I never said that. But she had to learn that for herself. And she also kept going back because she liked the low-calorie bars, would you believe? But it came to a point where she lost a crazy amount of weight with us. She was strength training, etc. She got super strong. She still is super strong. She's even a lot stronger now, actually. And one day she did a weigh-in and she was down like 3 stone or something. And the slimming club person was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And she's like, "Oh, I go to Doc Fitness." And next thing, the slimming club woman just like basically like shushed her off the fucking weighing scales and just ignored her. And that was the point in time. I think she went back like once or twice more of that and then eventually left. But because your one was like, "You didn't get those results with the slimming club, I don't even want to hear about it. Good luck." But yeah, like it took a lot of months to undo the damage that she thought from weigh-ins, and I can get into a whole episode about this. The foods, the sin-free, all this kind of the unlimited foods, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If anybody wants to dive into the Slimming World podcast episode that I have, Shane, if you have any relation to Slimming Club specifically, let me know. I can put them in the show notes. But I have one with Jason Monroe that I will link up.
I love Monroe, yeah.
Yeah, I'll link that up in the show notes as well, guys, if anybody wants to go a bit deeper into the slimming club.
He loves slimming clubs, I think.
Yeah, he only deals, I think, nearly with only people who've come from slimming clubs. So
he gets a lot of hate from it.
Yeah. Yes, so where are we? A lot of stuff to divulge there, a lot of things around identifying with food, placing your self-worth in the scales. Like for us as coaches, it's basic stuff. But we often forget how important this is. Even, I find it, Shane, even with clients that you'll have coached for months on end, they can slip back into these old habits very easily. If results don't, like, you know, if they're hitting a deficit, if they're strength training 3 to 4 times a week, if they're super active, but they're not getting results, depending on how they measure those results,
that's the
if
thing.
they are and they're not getting them, or if they are doing the work, but they're getting the results, but they're not tracking it properly, like they can actually slip back into old habits because now they're like, oh, this calorie deficit thing is not working for me anymore. And revisiting these things is important because let's just lay down the law in terms of if you're in a genuine deficit, no matter how big or small that deficit is, and you're a bit active, yes, whether you're doing strength training or not, you're going to lose weight. Whether that weight comes from muscle and body fat or body fat alone, if you're resistance training, you're going to make progress. That is it. Doesn't matter whatever else me and Shane talk about for the rest of this episode, those basic principles have to be there. I do not care if you think you're a magic person who thinks that you can't make progress, you can. There's something could be wrong somewhere, but the reality remains you can make progress.
I do think it's important to, like, some of the things that we bring in with our clients is non-scale victories. And the one question that I'll always ask my client is, and especially on the welcome calls that we have with our clients, is when you buy your clothes, what metric do you buy your clothes in? And I'll be like, what are you talking about, Shane? Do you go and buy your clothes by what you weigh or how you feel? And more often than not, they'll say by how I feel or a size. And I'm like, okay, so what's more important to you right now? It's how I feel. So then if you put 2 and 2 together, it becomes 4. But if you're only if you went into the shop and said, could I have a size 70 kilos? They will kick you out of the shop and send you to John of God's. It won't, like, you have to look at it from a non-scale point of view, is because it's difference between weight loss and fat loss. Yes, a scale is a metric, but it's not the only metric. It's like BMI is a metric, but BMI can be a harmful thing for some people, because if you look at The Rock, the actor, or Dwayne Johnson, whatever his real name is these days, he's overweight according to the BMI scale. So
I think he'd be obese, actually, wouldn't he?
Yeah. So
I'm considered overweight, Shane, for BMI.
Yeah, so that's exactly. And most people were like, you don't look overweight though. And it's like, yeah, but that's it. Because David has a different mentality. David is training. David's trying to get strong. David's trying to do it for performance. David has a goal in mind, and he's not only letting a particular marker. Like, someone doesn't get pissed off if their bank balance goes up, but yet when the scales goes up, they get pissed off. They're putting their self-worth into that number. That number has no power over you. It's an inanimate object. It's a piece of plastic on a floor, but you're putting your self-worth into it. And then it comes into self-sabotage. And generally, when you spoke about people who kind of things are working or things aren't working, generally people, then it's kind of this little voice in their head is like, oh, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if I'm worth this anymore. This self-sabotage thing comes in. It's either fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, or fear of judgment of others. And those three things, someone's probably nodding to this right now and saying, I probably feel like I'm feared of not good enough. But why aren't you good enough? What story? That's a story that you've created. What are you basing that off? And it could come from an element of trauma as a kid or getting bullied as a kid. But that still doesn't mean it's that doesn't mean it's you. That's a chapter in your life. That's not the full story. The next chapter can still be written. You have the pen and paper, you have the typewriter, you have the laptop in front of you to write the next chapter for yourself. You don't necessarily need to let that person win. You're letting that person win rather than having your own. You are the person directing your destiny. You have the power to put one foot in front of the other. As I compare it to, like, a weight loss journey is kind of like a journey. If you're going from Dublin to Lahinch and you take the wrong turn with the sat nav, if you take the wrong turn, the sat nav will tell you to turn around and take a new direction. It's up to you whether you want to take that direction or stay where you are. You'll get to your destination eventually, but you may take the wrong right turn, the odd turn here and there. But if you know what your why is in the background, or where you're going to go or where you want to go in the background, you'll get to your destination. But it's understanding that you probably won't be happy when you get there, because that's what most people think, is that they'll be happy when they get to a certain destination. The happiness starts at the beginning. The desire and the want and the why starts at the beginning rather than at the end. And the perfect example of that is Mario Goetze, the footballer that won the World Cup for Germany. He had 7 seconds of epiphany. He built up his whole career, 21, 22, when he scored that winner for Germany in the World Cup. I was never able to get that high ever again. And his career went a little bit left field after that. I think he's in PSV or something like that over in Holland. But his whole career was based off that high. And he thought he'd be happy when he got that. He was happy for 7 seconds, but he couldn't get that high ever again. There's always something new that we want whenever we get to go. We're talking about it off air. There's always something new that we want. And thinking that you'll be happy when you lose a certain amount of weight or get into a certain number of scales, you'll get to it and like, I want more. That's human nature. That's how humans work. We want more. We want the next thing. We want the new shiny object. We want that dopamine hit. That's why Instagram and social medias work, to get that little dopamine hit.
Yeah, we were talking about that very thing in relation to business. You were talking about it coming from being burnt out as a PT to transitioning online. And then you're looking to the future and you're like, but where's the point where I'm kind of like, am I always going to want more?
Yeah.
As you said, it's human nature. And I think a big thing for me over the last year is I do. I can safely say now, I know what enough means for me. And I mean that in terms of like, even my training, my nutrition, my career, doc fitness, et cetera. Like, I have enough. I have all that I want and need right now. I'm enjoying myself. So like, I'm not going to, yes, I still chase down goals and I'll do all that stuff, but I'm not going to think that by hitting a certain body weight goal or by getting stronger or lifting X amount of weight or, I don't know, helping more people, that I'm going to be magically happier when I hit that point. Life does not happen like that. Because I spent a lot of time placing all my kind of placing things in my head, thinking, oh, if I hit these goals, things would be better for me. I don't want to use the word happiness. I think it gets, I think I'd be happy when I hit that goal, is what a lot of people say, but it does not work like that. And like you said, if you're driving to a certain destination, it's like driving to somewhere that has an unbelievable scenery. And when you get there, it's like a shitty little hut or something. And you're like, oh, this hut is shit. But you're like, yeah, but you missed the whole point of the journey. All the scenery was in the way, And I think that if people don't enjoy their training, week in, week out. Yes, there'll be days where you could not be bothered, but because you built up these habits, you'll still commit to your training, and you'll get a sense of progress after that. You'll feel better because you've committed to what you said you would commit to after you've that training session done. You'll get days where you don't want to do it. You'll get days where you want to eat more pizza and chocolate. And it's still also okay if you do eat the pizza and chocolate. You'll get days where you just want to say, fuck all this, couldn't be arsed anymore. And then the next day you're grand again. That's part and parcel of the journey, but you have to have some element of enjoyment. You have to know what is enough. Stop thinking that if I lose 20 more pounds of Doc Fitness or Shane Walsh, that my life is going to get dramatically better. It probably won't. And I just think, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, Shane, really, if you can decipher what I'm trying to say, I suppose
That's not what you're saying.
Find out what enough is for you. Like, you probably already have enough.
Yeah.
But I think enjoyment has to be built into pretty much everything that you do. Yes, that requires a lot of education, especially around food, because you can't go living your life be feeling bad after a pizza, feeling bad after taking a bit of chocolate. You can't live your life thinking you can't have a certain food, or you can't eat a certain time of the day, X, Y, and Z. There has to be fucking enjoyment. And I think once you have that, you stop placing your happiness in the future, and you realize, things are pretty fucking good. Let's keep going and focus on important stuff like family and friends and relationships. That's it.
Yeah, really. and I think what you've said there, I think we work with our clients on a thing called the 5 Fs. So we break your life into the 5 Fs, which is fitness, family, focus, fun, and finance. So fitness, you set a goal, set a 90-day outcome into each of these. So 90-day fitness goal, 90-day family goal, and that could be a family night or a movie night or spending time with your kids each and every week or whatever it may be. A finance goal, save amount of money, or you're going to go book a holiday or whatever it may be. Then you talk about a focus goal, which is your mindset, but it has to be attainable. It has to be an actual measure of saying, I'm going to journal 5 out of 7 days a week. And that could be more of a thing. So fitness, finance, focus, fun. And then the fun one is, right, book in a date night or book in a cinema or going to see mates. I'm going to meet up with one mate a week. So by the end of the 30 days or 90 days, you're going to have seen a friend once a week for those weeks. And then it allows you to reassess and have a balanced life over time. But the hardest part is the focus one, because it's very hard to find an attainable one where it's kind of like a journal thing. And a lot of people will start off with a journal with the best intent. Most people will start off with meditation with the best intent, but they'll try to be like, I'm waiting for the meaning of life to hit me here. If you start off with meditation and stuff like that as like 30 minutes, you're not going to last. Start off with 4 big deep breaths in, do a bit of box breathing, and try to work with that. But if it, bring a little bit more balance into all aspects of life, rather than trying to only put in saying, I'll be happy when I lose weight. I'll be happy when I get to 100 kg squat. I'll be happy I get to a certain size on my waist. I guarantee you won't, because you'll want more. You'll be looking at other people and saying, why do they have this and I don't have that? You don't know what they've done to get there. You don't know what genetics that have fired them there either. Most people only see the highlight reel. But the people that we look up on social media, people we read books about all the time, they're doing the unsexy stuff that you don't want to do more often than not. Yes, they have the voice in their head. They have the same voice as you have in your head, but they're choosing not to listen to them. They're choosing not to fire at them. They're choosing to listen to them and say, hang on, where's this coming from? I'm more in tune with my body. If I can understand my body and listen to it a little bit more, that's going to serve me more. It's not about doing 7 sessions a day or 7 sessions a week in the gym. That's not going to serve anyone. You won't last that. If you look back at when people start off in the gym in January, bring more balance into your life. Appreciate what you have right now. Look at where you were 5 years ago and look where you are right now. You probably wanted the house. You probably have the house now. You wanted kids. You probably have kids now. You probably have the promotion. You're still not happy. Look and say, what's important to you right now? If you were to look again in 5 years, where do you want to be? And reassess. And where do you actually want to go? It could be that you need to change jobs, and that's okay. There's no age limit on changing job. I changed job at 29, 30. There's no wrong time to start a job or retrain. It's completely.
Take another one, Shane, on the career element, because we do the same thing, by the way. We host 90-day workshops we used to do them 4 times a year. We're actually changing the structure of it next year. We'll do 1 to 2 workshops a year, but we're still encouraging clients obviously to set their 90-day goals. Not everyone does it. It's for us to kind of buy the clients into it, to sell them on the fact that, look, if you set some 90-day targets in these different areas of your life, it gives you more of a fulfilling role, I think, with things. I think I'm not an angel for doing it myself every 90 days either. I think you need to cycle through periods of doing it. Like I did it religiously for 5 or 6 years straight. I know obviously with COVID, it's kind of slowed down a bit, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to have background goals still ticking away in my head. But like we set 90-day targets, you have your 5 Fs. We do it in a way where it's called body, balance, and business. It's the exact same thing. Those are further broken down than into the ones you talked about. And we even try and build that into our like events we do in the gym and that kind of stuff as well. But I think when it comes to the career or job element, we find that a lot of people are just fucking fed up or just do not enjoy the roles they're in. And then this wall is nearly thrown up saying, oh, it's easy to say that I can't just stop and career change or whatever. But have you ever stopped to think that, is there any way you can make that role more fulfilling for yourself? And then people start to look at things differently. Because I'm not naive to people being in situations where they can't just fucking leave a job overnight when they have to provide for family and they're a single parent. There's different scenarios for different people, but there's always ways you can make things more fulfilling for yourself. You don't have to conform to the status quo within whatever role you are. Like we've had people working in schools where like they hated being in the staff room, and I only found this out privately. Like they hated being in the staff room more so they just didn't like being around a certain group of teachers. And I was kind of, why the fuck are you trying to please those teachers all the time? Why are you trying to spend time with them? And I just want to fit in. And until they just kind of stop spending more time with them, they just started to enjoy their roles more because they weren't around this kind of negativity or wanting to fit in with a group that they just didn't fit in with. You know what I mean? Sounds so simple, like, but it's another way we help clients with it.
Yeah, it's seeking gratification from other people that are probably never going to give you the gratification. But if you can't give yourself your own gratification, what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point? Like if you can't appreciate what you have and appreciate where you're at, and if you want to change jobs, like I said, obviously if you've kids and stuff and a mortgage and stuff, then it's a little bit more difficult. But you could easily just not easily, but you could create a side hustle and do it as a mixer and see if it gets to a level of where you could do it on the weekends, to say like making cakes and do the cake sales and stuff like that on the weekends, and that could be a little bit more pocket money for yourself. And if that kicks off, well, then you could potentially move over to it. My situation is a little bit different because I got sick, and I don't want that to happen to someone else. But there are people who have done it. It's also realizing that you're not a tree; you can move.
I think just the overall element though of the whole reason we're talking about that is that health and fitness involves a lot more than just nutrition and training. You know, like you said at the very start, mental health is health. And there's different parts of this puzzle. And we find a lot of clients, like things could go on fine, and there's just something that's kind of always holding them back. And sometimes it's people they're surrounded with, it's relationships they're in, it's jobs they're in. And when they start to fine tune those things just get better overall. And it's directly linked then to feeling better with your training and nutrition and everything else that comes with that. So, I think we've gone through some pretty deep stuff over the last 40 minutes, which is fantastic. But we touched on, we're not going to get through I think anything of what we plan to get through after this. We can come back to the future to that, because I do want to bring you on, Shane, to talk about PCOS in depth. I think we should do a standalone episode on it. We had planned to touch it in this one, but time is against us. But a big one we had planned to talk about, and I have 2 questions in relation to it here. Let's ask this first one, see where we go from here. So, handy tips to try and stop the food onslaught before the time of the month. Let's talk a little bit about the menstrual cycle.
Okay, so before we go through the menstrual cycle, we have to actually understand what the menstrual cycle is. I think that we have to start with the absolute basics. And the more important thing is, like, ovulation doesn't happen for every single woman, and it happens at different times. So each woman is completely different. So it's important for you to get the likes of apps like Kandara or Clue, or just a fashion pen and paper, and understand your body. If you don't understand your body, your partner or you will never understand your body. This will give you the freedom. And you'll notice signs and understand signs and compare your cycle to the seasons of the year. of like, say, right, I feel alive during summer. This is when I can attack the day. I feel a little bit darker. That's your winter. That's probably the time of your month. I feel that I'm getting a little bit lower in mood. That's your autumn. And then your spring is you're coming out of it. You're coming out of the cocoon and you feel a little bit more alive. And that's when you potentially can attack your sessions. It's up to you to pinpoint where those are. They're going to be completely different from every single person. But the cycle is kind of brought into four main stages. There's the menstrual phase, there's the follicular phase, the ovulation phase, and the luteal phase. And each length of these can differ from woman to woman. That's why it's so important to understand what it is. If you've got PCOS, which David has said that we're going to talk about it, but there are episodes of the Shane Walsh podcast which has particular episodes on that. So please do go over on to that. But the first one is the menstrual phase. And the menstrual phase is the first stage of your actual cycle. This is when you get your period. This is where the phase starts from an egg from the previous cycle isn't fertilized. And since pregnancy hasn't taken place, the level of the hormones estrogen, which is your female hormone or your Beyonce hormone, and progesterone progesterone, which is your calming hormone, helps to regulate your cycle. But its main job is to get your uterus ready for pregnancy to drop, which is your progesterone. So if you think of I'm not sure if you're going to use this part of the video, but if you think of your cycle from the first 2 weeks, that's when your estrogen levels drives up towards the peak of ovulation. Then that kind of peaks back down. And then you're at week 2 after ovulation appears, progesterone takes over. So your estrogen is the bit that gets you edgy and gets you a little bit more a little bit more emotional. And your progesterone is the bit that calms you down. It's your soothing hormone. So your yin to your yang. So they both have functions. Estrogen caps at ovulation, dips back down, and then progesterone takes over. But when that happens, when you're on around this time of the month, you may find that you have cramps, tender breasts, bloating, mood swings, irritability, headaches, tiredness, lower back pain. And this phase can last for about 3 to 7 days, but some women can have prolonged periods. So that's why it's so important to understand where that's happening. Then you have the follicular phase, and the follicular day starts on the first day of your period. So there is a little bit of overlap with the menstrual cycle. It starts on the hypothalamus, which is your hormone regulator, sends a signal to your pituitary gland to release FSH, which is your follicle stimulating hormone. So the hypothalamus is in charge of releasing hormones and regulating body temperature. So you may find kind of going into ovulation phase that temperature is starting to rise up, but the hormone stimulates your ovaries to produce around 5 to 20 small sacs of follicles. Each follicle contains an immature egg. Only the healthiest egg will eventually mature. The maturing follicle sets off a surge in estrogen, which is the female hormone that thickens the lining of your uterus. This creates nutrient-rich environment for an embryo to grow. The average of this kind of lasts for about 16 days. It can range from 11 to 27 days, depending on your cycle. And then we've got ovulation phase, which is the peak of kind of the cycle, because this is where the baby is going to be made around this time. If you are having sex and trying for a baby, it's around this time. Otherwise, it's like trying to ride a doorknob. It's not going to end very well if you want to have a baby. I didn't use that line. That was Aisling O'Kelly. That was not me.
Jesus.
By all means, have sex. Have sex whenever you want. But you're trying for a baby, try around ovulation phase. So this is where you're rising estrogen levels.
Not with a doorknob.
Or carrot. Rising estrogen levels during the follicular phase trigger your pituitary gland to release luteinizing hormone, or LH. And this is what starts the process of ovulation. You can tell you're ovulating by a slight rise in your body temperature. So if you're taking a thermometer, that's probably when you know you're ready to kind of potentially try for a baby. That could be one of those. Or a thicker discharge, or the texture of like egg whites in you, and you may notice those in your pants or your knickers. The ovulation happens at around day 14, but if you have a 28-day cycle, so if you have a 32-day cycle, it could happen at day 16. If you have a 35-day cycle, it could happen at around kind of 17 to 18, depending on what's happening. So it's meant to happen in the middle of your cycle. And if for whatever reason you're not ovulating, then you need to go and talk to your GP or your medical professional. It lasts for around 24 hours. After a day, the egg will dissolve if it isn't fertilized. And then we've got the luteal phase. And this, after the follicle releases its eggs, it changes into the corpus luteum. What happens next is the hormones aren't released, mainly progesterone and some estrogen. The rise in hormones allows for a fertilized egg to implant. If you do get pregnant, your body will produce HCG. This is the hormone pregnancy test detect. So it helps to maintain the corpus luteum and keep the uterine lining thick. If you don't get pregnant, the corpuscle will shrink away and will be kind of like reabsorbed, leading to decreased levels of estrogen and progesterone. During this time, you may find that you get bloating, breast swelling, tenderness, mood swings, headaches, weight gain, which is water weight. It isn't fat. Change in sexual desire, food cravings, and trouble sleeping. This kind of lasts for about 11 to 17 days, and the average length is about 2 weeks. But every girl's is going to be so different. So those apps are Kindara, Clue, or there are other ones on the market as well. But or else you can just have a normal notebook on your phone. And they're really important to know when to eat or what to eat and when to train. But the question there was kind of like about the food, wasn't it? Or about how the cravings and stuff.
Yeah, I think because yes, there's a lot of research on this, right? But there still needs to be more. There still is room for more to be done around.
Most training research is done on lads, and
Yes.
a lot of it's done on rats. So the research is only coming out really now, and there's still a long way to improve. Like the research is constantly changing, and the likes of Dr. Stacey Sims, who I was very lucky to interview, she is doing incredible research on it. And if you've had the vaccine, that's could be your choice. Particularly with Pfizer, you may see a delay in your cycle because your body is under so much stress, and it could be delaying your cycle. So if you are struggling with that, go to your GP, and they may give you something to kind of some advice. They can't give you anything, but it's just that your body's under so much stress, and your hypothalamus is just trying to protect your body. And when your body is trying to get protected, it turns off the hormones in order to protect the organs, because if you're getting pregnant, that's another stressor on the body. So it doesn't want another stressor on the body. So it just protects the organs. And that's why when HA, which is hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is lack of a cycle, that's why that kicks in, because it's literally gone into safety mode. So if there's so much research that needs to be done, every girl is going to be different. Yes, that's the biggest thing.
I think that's the biggest point. And like, I was chatting to, I can't remember who exactly it was, but we were just talking about the research behind it. And in relation to, I was asking her, I think it was a Kate McDade, I was asking her, does she change much with her clients around her cycle? And she said, it depends on the client. And I take a similar approach. Yes, it depends on the client, but we don't overly hype up or talk about it that much unless we deal with the client, obviously individually, right? Because we train in a way where we're not hammering our clients each week. We train where you leave a training session feeling worked hard, but next week I could do a bit more. And then we progressively build that up, and then we'll have back off weeks. That does not suit females perfectly, because we're not trying to match up their training that we do in the gym as a group to exactly each person's cycle in the gym. Obviously, we couldn't do that. So yes, we'll get clients that are more tired one week, and even though it could be our quote unquote hard week in the gym, which we call peak week, it just means for them, look, you're not feeling tip top shape. Let's not push as hard this week. The fact you're here is a massive plus. And that's really the height of it. Yes, we'll have clients that crave a little bit more, and we're like, look, it's okay to have a little bit more carbs or a little bit more sugary stuff. It's okay if you have a bit more calories this week. And then we'll have the question of, do we need to stay dieting right now this week? We can change those factors individually. But I think the way we train as clients, or the way we train our clients in terms of the resistance training element, because we always have like a buffer of, we're not hammering people, depending on how clients feel week to week, we just auto-regulate it within that session as it is. And it's the same with the nutrition. We auto-regulate it. I think the biggest thing is for females just to be aware of what's going on. Once you're aware, it's okay. Like there's a difference between eating a bit more sugary stuff and having a bit more carbs versus just mindlessly eating all around you because you're giving yourself this permission to do that. But yet it makes you feel like shit afterwards, and you feel guilty afterwards, and you're in the cycle again, So I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Shane, around what you do with your clients when it's time of the month.
As I kind of say in order of beat, it's kind of like, it depends on the girl and it depends where they're at. So the first thing that I would always say is to track your cycle, because most people most women don't probably know what they're going on. And one of the questions on our kind of sign up form is, how do you feel the week before and week of your cycle? And the answers vary. Some will feel fatigued, some will feel a little bit stressed. Some people will like, oh, I actually around ovulation, I can't really sleep, which happens to about 30% of women. So that can have a massive impact as well. It depends. So on our check-in sheet, we have, well, what week are you on? And then after the first month and after the second month, I'll notice a trend, or even the first month, I'll notice a trend saying, right, this is the time that we're going to try and increase your food a little bit, 250, 300 calories. If you need that a little bit more, by all means have it. Allow yourself to have it. Focus on getting your sleep and recovery in, getting a little bit more protein in, reducing your white carbohydrates. Carbs are not bad. They're not going to kidnap your family. It's going for more whole grain options, because it's essential towards the end or coming up to your cycle that digestion might have an impact. And the only way to get rid of the old estrogen is to poo it out. So we need to make sure your digestion, your water, that side of things is at a decent level, and that your stress and stuff. Because if you're having discomfort, it's probably a sign that your body's just kind of struggling to get rid of that estrogen. So kind of like a snake skin, it kind of renews itself and kind of comes back after the cycle. Kind of saying to yourself, like, treat yourself like a report card, like you're at school. Track when you are good, track when you are feeling good, when your mood is high. Reducing your caffeine. If you're relying on caffeine to get you from A to B or get you through the whole day, you need to look at your sleep and stress routine. You don't need, like, especially if you're a parent and stuff like that, that's not easy. But also, are you forgetting to drink water? Are you forgetting to have naps in the day? Are you emotional eating? So when you talk about the likes of cravings, which can generally happen from like a little bit after ovulation, kind of coming into the week before, the week of, it depends on the girl. Some girls won't eat or won't want to eat, or they may not feel a little bit nauseous kind of the week of, but generally the week before is where kind of the cravings, or kind of week 2, week 3, kind of the cravings start to come in. A lot of those cravings are emotion. All right. So those cravings, some will say, I crave sugar. You don't crave sugar. That's a story. You don't crave sugar. And people are like, Shane, you're a man, you'll never understand. I'll never understand what it's like from a psychological point of view, but I will know from what it's like from a physiological point of view and from a science point of view. We, as humans, our bodies cannot tell us what food we crave. It's not how the body or the brain works. When we get a little bit more tired, or when we get a little bit stressed, or we get a little bit more emotional, the brain kicks in. The brain will look for the quickest source of energy. And the brain's quickest source of energy will be carbohydrates, it will be sugar, or will be higher palatable foods like fatty foods or takeaways and stuff like that. That's essentially what's happening. But they're not going to make you feel amazing. They may give you this temporary release of like, this is soothing something. But if you have a little bit more protein, a little bit more fruit, a little bit more whole grain carbs, a little bit more veggies, that's how eat regular meals, reducing your caffeine, getting more water in. You're like, Shane, this is a lot of effort, a little hassle, but it's doing what you've been doing potentially beforehand. Having that dark chocolate. Like, one of the recipes I kind of suggest to the girls is I get a Greek yogurt, a couple of squares of dark chocolate, bit of berries, bit of blueberries, and a little bit of chia seeds or flax seeds. That's getting your sweet tooth hit. It's getting your protein in. It's nice and light. It's getting your dark chocolate. It's getting magnesium in. And generally, magnesium is an amazing supplement to have around the time of the month. 100 to 300 milligrams of that each day, and you take that consistently, is amazing, because you probably don't get enough from food. But it's probably what you've been doing already, but the emotions will kick in. And it's kind of like, that's where the kind of those things of like self-worth will come in. The nagging voice will come in. And we use a food and mood journal with some of our clients. About 70% of our clients don't actually count calories. We use a mood and food journal with some of them. And it's recognizing around that time, what's the emotion before you have the food? If it's an emotion or a negative emotion, pause. Do I want this food, or am I eating this because I'm trying to numb an emotion? If it's numbing the emotion, wait 20 to 30 minutes. Cravings subside, emotions subside. Emotions and urges and cravings, imagine it's like a wave. It crashes up and crashes back down. There's a height of it, and then it crashes back down. Most of them are an emotion. And generally what happens around kind of like week 2, week 3, week 4 is generally that the feelings and stuff that you've had, that you've been suppressing for those weeks, will come to the surface. Those feelings of inadequacy, feelings of lower self-esteem, they'll come to the forefront. You'll be a little bit more self-conscious. You'll be looking at social media a little bit more. You'll be comparing yourself that a little bit more. So it's about getting uncomfortable with those feelings and those emotions. We do things a little bit differently, as I said at the very, very beginning. But we have Jane on board who can talk from her point of view, and having a girl point of view. Myself and Dallas can only talk about it from the science point of view. But Jane has spoken about this openly about herself, and this is how it's worked for her. Emotionals are only temporary. They're only thoughts. Thoughts are only beliefs. Beliefs are not facts. Break a column into a piece of paper. Thoughts, be opinion. Write down the actual thing that's in your head. Is this an actual fact about yourself, or is this an opinion that you may have created from yourself that you're making up this story? If you write it down in black and white, or whatever color pen and paper you're using, you'll notice a trend that you're creating most of the stories. They have no factual evidence. And it's about kind of understanding when those foods and stuff like that. So it's removing the whole story of I crave sugar, I crave chocolate, I crave things. Your body cannot tell you what you want. Be present with the emotion, let the emotion sit, get uncomfortable, and give yourself that food it's the dangers in the dose, basically, with the food. Like
exactly
have the chocolate, have the ice cream, but
yeah,
it's how you feel afterwards is going to in the danger in the dose, basically.
But Shane, we talked at the very start, you were like laying down some basic principles around the mistakes that females make. And we talked about like, don't restrict carbs, don't restrict foods that you think you have to. Eat your chocolate every day if you want it. Have your ice cream. Yes, eat your protein, eat your fiber, eat your veggies, eat your fruit. Obviously, we're not denying that. But
yeah,
like I said, much of around the time of the month, much of what you should be doing is what you should be doing anyway.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That's basically what Shane's after saying. He mentioned more fiber, protein, veggies, etc. It's what we should be doing regardless. And I think that's, if there was like solutions to a lot of things, it's like, just fucking keep doing what you're doing. Yes.
I just do the basics.
Yeah, that's it. Like, and if I circle back around to the question, then handy tips to try and stop the food onslaught before the time of the month. How much of that is a story that you've told yourself for fucking years, and now you've conditioned yourself into when time in the month happens, I'm going to eat X. So at a subconscious level,
it could also be that the person in question has asked that question, which is a great question, by the way.
Yeah.
It could be that they could be from a restrictive background, that they could be coming from like, I'm only having 1,200 calories, and then that's like going from Dublin to Galway and half a tank of petrol, and expecting not having to, like, your car's going to stop. So it's about giving yourself that enough fuel throughout the rest of the month in order so you don't have to keep topping it up and pressing the fuck up button. So I'm saying if you're going 1,200 calories, I'm not telling these aren't the numbers I'm telling you to do, but if you're going from 1,200 calories Monday to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'm more than like 2,500, 300 calories or 3,000 calories. So that's bringing you into a surplus probably at some point. But why not try to have the 1,800 calories a little bit more? And then if you need that little bit more food, 250, 300, 200 to 300 calories around your time of the month, having the chocolate every single day, having your veggies, having your regular meals. Are you depriving yourself? The only difference probably around that time is there's a voice in your mind. There's an emotion present that's like, I'm not happy with how I look. I feel fat. Well, fat's not a feeling. Fat's how you feel and how you perceive yourself. It's your self-worth talking to you. And it's worth readdressing that if hunger isn't the issue, food's not going to solve that issue. It's going to suppress it emotionally for like probably about 5 seconds. And then you'll keep doing it. But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So if you are restricting yourself on those low calories, think about it. Can I live like this for the next 5 years? And the answer will probably be no. And you're probably not living like that right now, in that you're probably telling yourself you're on 1,200 calories, but you're not on 1,200 calories.
100%. I think as well, even for people that are not trying to lose weight, it's a very similar principle. Like they're giving themselves this kind of belief that they have to eat more now, or that it's like, oh, it's because I feel like this, I need to eat all this. And I see it as a cycle, it's a
justification.
There seems to be like a lot of people struggle with, there's no middle ground. There's no like, I hear the story of, I can't just have the one biscuit, I have to have the whole pack, or I have to have 5 or 7. And it's kind of like, why? And it's like, well, it's very hard not to. I was like, right, let's look at what you're having, what biscuits you having. And it's like, oh, just chocolate digestive, right? So depending on the client we're talking to, depending if the goal is fat loss or not, we might even change the biscuit. Like, right, can we go for one of those kind of low calorie biscuits and have 5 or 6 of them? So as a start, and it's kind of like you're getting the same amount, same quantity of biscuits, but the calories are probably halved. Or else we're like, can you take 2 biscuits out, wrap up the packet, put it in the top of the press, or else just fuck it in the bin? Because no, you do not need to have 14 packs of biscuits for the 7 visitors going to call over the next year. There's just, it's a lot of it is like the environment that you create at home for yourself as well. If you make it easy to get to these things and you've always done them and you were grown up around that, it's going to be hard to break that cycle if you do not try and break that cycle for yourself.
I think a lot of people struggle now with the kind of the boundaries have been gone because they're working at home. So I always talk about, like, especially with people working at home, what my advice would be is keep multi-packs out of the house. If you're going for like the likes of chocolate, get the smaller bars and have 2 or 3 squares or 4 squares each day. Pause, wait 20-30 minutes. If you want, go for Fredos or Fritos, whatever they're called, or Chomp bars, go for the smaller bars in the shops.
Did you just call her Did you just call her Fredo?
Yeah, I got given abuse for that yesterday. I got given abuse for that yesterday. My D4 accent. I get it.
Fuck's sake.
I got my D4 accent. Yeah.
Fritos.
That's good. So go for the smaller bar. If you're looking for more fruit, put it out onto the kitchen table. If there's kids in the house, they will eat whatever in the kitchen. So if they see you eating fruit, if they see a bowl of fruit on the table, they will go for it. So some of those principles that you were brought up with of having like more veggies, more fruit in your diet, and you're telling your kids to have the same thing, now it's a time. Now actually apply it to yourself. There's no point in you saying to your kids, eat your veggies. They're never seeing you eat your veggies. So why would they copy it? Why would they listen to it?
Yeah.
Kids are clever. Kids are sponges. They will pick up whatever you do. If you've been restrictive, they pick up on that. If you're restricting your calories or saying I feel fat or any of these negative connotations you have towards yourself, they're going to pick up on that. So it's about saying to yourself, right, is the approach that you're currently on right now, weight loss or no weight loss, whatever your goal is the approach working for you right now with restrictive or taking out the food you enjoy and not having every single day? Is that working for you? No. So what has to change? Have the food they want, potentially have it at a different time of the day, potentially don't buy multi-packs, buy more fruit into the house, and potentially do a weekly shop. You have control of what comes into that house. Nobody else. Stay away from the multi-packs. They do not serve you at all. And if there is an emotion present, we all emotionally eat. That's the big thing that I want to say. We all emotionally eat. I don't want to sit here on my high horse. We all emotionally eat. When I get stressed, I don't eat. When I get if there's an emotion, I don't really eat. I'm the opposite.
Yeah, same.
So if someone's the opposite, if someone actually eats, it's kind of asking yourself, pausing, is this going to make me the person that I want to become? That hard-hitting question will probably stop 20, 30, 40, 50% of those overeating episodes. And it's not a binge. A binge means you can't stop. It's probably emotional eating. Emotional eating means that you can stop, you just choose not to. So there's a very, very big difference with the language that people use. A binge means you have no control. You almost black out and you kind of go into an out-of-body experience and you end up going into like 4,000 or 5,000 extra calories. An emotional eating episode is very, very different. You're soothing an emotion. You can stop if you want, but you're choosing not to. And if you are struggling from binge eating or purging or any of that side of stuff, please go and talk to a mental health professional, because there is help out there and there's a massive increase in that. Even 60% of increase above men during lockdown in eating disorders. It's scary.
Wow. I'm going to leave it with this, Shane, because I know you mentioned not to eat multi-packs. And I think something that needs to be said as well, just to wrap this all up, is that just because we're given singular tips, like Shane mentioned, having chocolate at a different time of day, that does not mean that that's going to be like that for the rest of your life. It just means you're trying to break habits, you're trying to break cycles, and you're trying different things out. Same goes with the multi-packs. I used to be at a stage where I couldn't buy a multi-pack because I would eat a lot more of them. Rather than eat one bar, I'd eat 2. And I wouldn't eat the whole thing. I'm just being honest, I wouldn't, but I'd eat 2, maybe sometimes even 3. And it wasn't serving me. So I used to stop buying the packs and buy singular bars because it cost more money. And I didn't want to buy a heap of single bars. And because I didn't have the amount of them, I wouldn't be able to eat them every day of the week. So I did break them up, where I'd have one day and have another one 2 days later, whatever. It served me better, is what I'm trying to say, rather than just getting the multi-pack. Another then tactic was when we started bringing more multi-packs into our shopping, yes, I would never just have them out. I'd never have biscuits out. We're not really biscuit people anyway, but it was always just fruit was the only thing you could see in the kitchen. And I would actually have this like Coca-Cola tin where you had to open the lid and click the thing on, and we put all the multi-pack bars in there. We take them out of the packs, put them in there, clip it on, and it was in a high press. So there was a couple of steps involved to get them down. I had to open the high press, had to pull them out, bring them down, unclip them, little things. It might sound like nothing, but it was something. And my wife wasn't able to reach them. So it was kind of like when we want them, I had to get them for us both. That stopped the ease of convenience of getting them. And now we're at a stage where we're in our new house. We have these popcorn bowls and we put all our treat bars in there. I do buy treat size packs now because I have the I have the control not to eat. I have it. Everything for me is a choice now. If I want one, I'll have one. And it's the same for my wife. Like, we have them in a low press. They're easy to get to, but that's because we've spent a lot of time creating habits and behaviors around that. So Shane is saying there, like, that doesn't apply to me what Shane just said. Don't buy multi-packs. I buy multi-packs now to save money because 12 Whispers is €3.
And that will be the argument back in that. Well, and my argument back was like, by all means, but there are smaller multi-packs. And if you want,
they're the ones that we use. Yeah. The small ones.
And if you want, and if by all means, like, if you want, if it's geographically possible, because I know some people live out in the country and rural areas and stuff, but if you want to go and get a bar, potentially walk to the shop to get your bar, habit stack. You're getting your walk in, you're potentially going to get a coffee in, plus you're potentially going to get your chocolate for yourself. So you're killing 3 birds with one stone. If you're picking up the kids in the school run, there could be the option. If you're watching GAA or you're watching your kids at sport, walk around the field. Potentially, if there's a shop beside it, that could be the time for you to have that bar. Mix it with something that you enjoy, which is watching your kid play sports. Be that person. And it's not that we have to change and remove old habits. We can't do that. But what we can do is habit stack and habit layer. For me, my biggest thing is, if in the first thing in the morning, I will have a pint of water, but beside that glass or beside that press will be my vitamins. So if I want to get the glass of water, the vitamins are there, so the vitamins get hit back. And then the fruit bowl is right beside that. So I will grab a bit of fruit, and that's me set to go off in training.
Yeah. So I'm pretty much the same. I'm very similar. Vitamins. It's even funny now. I don't take omega-3s first thing in the morning because I feel like I'm going to puke like half an hour after I take them on an empty stomach. Yeah. But no, look, they're things you develop and you build over time, and you can't underestimate the small steps, the small changes. And like I said, everything that we've talked about, yes, there's tactics, there's tools, there's behaviors, there's habits behind everything that we do. But if you're trying something out, you're trying to break habits, you're trying to break cycles or build new good habits or whatever it is, nothing is set and like nothing is permanent. You know, you don't have to not buy biscuits forever, because if you like biscuits, you can buy them. But in the future, you might have better control over taking genuinely 1 or 2 versus taking the whole pack. You know,
restriction has never served that person. The restriction has never served anyone in long term. So if you have been restricting and you keep having kind of like feast or famine mode, why not try the different approach and see if it works for you over time? It may be uncomfortable. It may be uneasy for a little while, but what's going to change? Like, if you don't give it a shot, nothing's really going to change. This could be the difference between you stopping yo-yo dieting. This could be the difference between you emotional eating. This could be the difference for you getting into that wedding dress if you're having that wedding dress. But it's important for you to say to yourself, well, I need to change my approach. Potentially reach out to someone and get coached. That with someone actually gives a shit, which is a rare thing. So potentially reach out to someone on that side of things. If you're struggling from purging, all that kind of stuff, eating disorder, there is help.
Yeah, that's it. Like, it really, isn't it? How many people are going to be able to help themselves with this kind of stuff from listening to podcasts, from reading articles? Yes, you'll pick up bits along the way, but a lot of the time, people do genuinely need coaching from a coach that does care, from a coach that is experienced, from a coach that has spent probably countless hours in the high tens of thousands probably on their own education, and has a proven track record of people and you can trust. You're probably guaranteed to change your life for the better, as cringy as that might sound, but that's just the reality of it. And it's what it's why me and Shane got in this industry, I suppose. So yeah, Shane, I'm going to leave it at that, because if I don't cut us off, I'll stay talking forever. Really enjoyed that, man. Thank you very much for coming on. I will definitely get you back on in the future. We'll definitely touch on more stuff, because we've left out, I think, 3 or 4 different topics there that I was hoping to dive into a bit more on. Where can people find out more about you, Shane?
So my handle on Instagram is Shane Walsh Fitness. Shane Walsh Fitness, and then the website is www.shanewalshfitness.com, and then the podcast is the Shane Walsh podcast. Get rid of that fitness in that podcast. And then there's gonna be a female health book coming out. I'm not going to put a dime on it. I have to finish writing it, but it's going to be coming out in the next, say, 6 months, hopefully 4 months. But I cannot thank you enough for coming on, for getting me. I'm in a trend. I'm in a sauce, I say all the time. But cannot thank you enough for having me on, and hopefully come back and do the PCOS stuff, because it's that's one thing I don't think enough people realize how many people actually have it.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that people like me and you can help. That's a big thing.
While staying in our lane.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the key. Like if somebody got onto me right now, I would probably refer, if it was a one-to-one online client, for example, but if it was somebody in the gym, it's different. We can work with that person here a bit more in depth, et cetera, while staying in our lane and helping in the realms that we can help. But yes, look at Shane, thank you very much. As I said, it was my pleasure, and hopefully we'll see you back in the near future.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much.